Hello. Today on Crux Investor, we're going to be talking to Michael Konnert, CEO of Vizsla Silver Corp, and he's with us now. Michael, really good to see you again. And if you could give a quick introduction to the company, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you, Merlin. And first of all, I want to say, thank you for hosting us again here. It's always our pleasure to join Crux and do these sessions and interviews, and we really appreciate the audience that Crux has. So first of all, thank you. And Vizsla Silver is a company that's exploring high grade discoveries on a district scale and bringing these discoveries towards a resource in Sinaloa, Mexico. And so just recently, in the last 18 months, essentially, we've gone from a company that has initially consolidated the district with an option agreement to now having two large-scale high-grade silver discoveries moving towards a resource, and then finally owning the entire district now 100%. And that district is unique in Mexico in the sense that it's come out of private hands. It hasn't come out of another major company. It hasn't come out of juniors or options. This has come out of private Mexican hands for the first time in modern history, and it has an existing infrastructure that is really the envy of all Mexico. It has two 4-lane highways running through the property. We have a 500 ton per day operating permitted mill. We have power lines. It's 45 minutes away from Mazatlán, which is a beautiful beachfront resort area. So it really is a special project, and one that of course Vizsla, our team, myself, we're all very excited about. And so I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk about it with you today.
Great, thank you. You said you're working towards the resource. Can I just ask, how many drills have you got turning, and where are you? I think you're on a 90,000 meter drill program. Is that right? How far have you got through that?
Well, we call it a 100,000 meter drill program, but it's basically 10 drill rigs turning for the foreseeable future. So we're not stopping at any kind of meter cutoff. For this year we'll do at least 100,000 meters, and that includes some COVID shutdowns and things like that. So we have I think one of the world's most aggressive drill programs for silver, and with 10 drill rigs turning, it's a lot of data to take in, but we have an excellent team on the project, and we're working towards that resource in Q1 of 2022. And that resource is going to focus primarily on the Nepoleon vein corridor and the Tajitos vein corridor, which these two veins that occur in the western portion of our district.
So what are you doing? Are you doing it must be close to 10,000 meters a month. I mean, if you're 100,000 meters, that's probably 8,000 meters a month.
Yeah. It's around 9,000, some lag time when you're moving rigs around and things like that, but it's about let's say between 9,000 and 10,000 a month here on average.
And what's the assay turnaround time? How long has it taken for your results to get through? Are there problems with the labs? Have you got a backlog? How far behind or how far ahead are the rigs running of the results?
Well, we finally caught up on news when we had to shut down for a month there, or I should say we barely caught up when we had to shut down for a month due to COVID in August, I believe. But now there is a bit of a backlog and a lag, but we're about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks on average, and certainly a little bit quicker when we rush. And speaking of rushing assays, we are rushing, the bulk of them ahead of our resource data cutoff, which is December 1st. So another, what is it here, middle of October, so another month and a half before our data cutoff for the resource. So we expect to get a lot of good data, good information into the resource before that cutoff.
You had a technical report put out last year, at the beginning of last year, and it'll probably be kind of a 90,000 meters of new drilling from them. And it's a completely different situation now in terms of your understanding of the resource to what that technical report shows, which was, reading through it or looking through it ahead of this conversation. Where you are now is a very different place in terms of your understanding to where you were, let's say, 12 months ago.
Absolutely, and even I'd go so far as to say, every couple of months, our interpretation of these veins, particularly in Napoleon, has improved, and our technical director Charles Funk, who's led the team to this discovery. Charles is a one of the, I think, the best young geologists out there, but he has a great way of talking about these things. And often he refers to our model at Nepoleon as 447B now that we, with a few more drill holes. Okay. So it's always evolving. Yeah. And, what I can say to, we're about 200 drill holes into Nepoleon now. And, essentially what it is, it's a 3 kilometer long trend. We've traced mineralization over 2 kilometers of that trend so far. Yep. And the resource area occurs in 1 kilometer. Now we're stepping out from that center, let's say that 1 kilometer center, and, expanding north and south along strike. And we've drilled that now, as I say, in the resource area for 1 kilometer, although that strike will increase. We've drilled down about 300 meters in depth, and the vein width on average, based on the holes that we've averaged up in that resource area now, is about 3.5 meters in width there. So
that's great. And I noticed that I've seen that San Dimas, a few 8 kilometers north of you. The average width is 2 meters. Will you be modeling your resource? I mean, maybe this is too much detail, but will you be modeling on a kind of a 2 meter width? Because that seems to be kind of a minimum mining width.
Yeah, I think what we've looked at it, and of course, San Dimas in the past, when Primero had it, they were mining an average width of less than that. It was about 1.5 meters. And the average grade was, somewhere between, it certainly ranged between 400 and 600. On those, so it took a little bit of dilution there, and was still profitable at some points there. So I think although these epithermal districts in Mexico are quite similar in terms of we believe that Panuco has some hallmarks, and it looks like it could be an earlier in development stage San Dimas in terms of the footprint, in terms of the genesis and the kind of the genesis of the rocks there, and the geology. It looks very similar. There are some things that are different in at Panuco than San Dimas. Now, one of the biggest things, of course, is that San Dimas has been operating on a commercial level. The Hearst family had it about 100 years ago, and then it was in Luzman, and it's had many iterations of commercial production. And I would suspect that they've gone to, some of the better veins. They probably got to those first. So I think over time, probably that average width has shrunk. Mining width has shrunk at San Dimas. And there's, in these systems, of course, there's kinks and swells and blowout zones in the vein, where mining becomes, quite profitable and quite simple for a long period of time when they get into these big clavos or ore shoots. But what we're seeing at Nepoleon is a little bit different, and there's a couple of reasons why. One is that it appears to be one long panel of mineralization here, continuous panel in a dip slip formation. And what's interesting about that is that it makes mining a little bit easier, and there are some wider areas. There's areas that go out to about 12 meters at Nepoleon, and there's some narrow areas that go into about 1.5 meters. But on average, over 3.5 meters of average vein width there is quite impressive. I would say, you don't have to take a huge amount of dilution there. As a matter of fact, you take limited dilution on with those widths. But what also sets Vizsla's Panuco apart, and this is really important, is there's a phase in the mineralization that's a semi-massive to massive sulfide phase that seems to occur and then deposit these high grades of silver, gold, and then also base metals. Our discovery hole, hole 7, back in summer of 2020, was 6 meters of 8 kilograms of silver equivalent. That had multi-kilo silver, 3 ounces of gold, double-digit % base metals. It was very, very high grade, and it occurred in this massive sulfide phase. And why that's important is that it is different than a lot of epithermal fields in Mexico, but it also allows us to pick that up on fixed loop electromagnetics. And I can get into this a little bit later when we talk about the exploration upside of the project, but we're now able to target the highest grade areas of the veins, and we don't see that in San Dimas. We haven't read about that in any of the reports that we've looked at San Dimas. There's only two companies that I can really think of that have done that with targeting this type of precious metals with EM on this scale would be, I think it was Dundee Precious Metals in Eastern Europe, and then of course our friend Steve's Bellevue Gold in Australia. They've been able to be predictive with geophysics and electromagnetics on gold. So I do. There are many parallels, and we think that Panuco is very similar to a San Dimas in scale and type of rocks, but there are some details about Panuco that I think are unique to itself.
Thank you. My goodness, there's a lot to unpack there.
Apologies, I sometimes get a bit excited about that.
No, it's a pretty comprehensive answer. Okay, sticking with the concept that it's kind of a panel, and just kind of riffing back to San Dimas, because they talk about these strike zones of kind of 1 or 2 kilometers, and then within the panel of mineralization, there's what they call a favorable zone where they get these dipping, plunging shoots, and kind of within that broad panel, they can estimate that they're going to get about 30% of that turning into ore. Now, obviously, the 3.5 meters average width is good. Let's say a minimum mechanized mining width is going to be around 2 meters. Just in terms of kind of the continuity of the panel that you've got at Panuco, what's your drill spacing, and how much variability is there kind of north and south? And let's say you've got a panel with a plunging shoot on it. How much vertical continuity is there, and how much kind of confidence do you have in your step outs along strike? Are you doing 20-meter step outs, or 50 meters, or 10 meters?
So initially we've done as wide as 100-meter step outs, but now we're doing 50-meter centers with fence drilling on that, essentially to work towards the resource, and that gives us in some places an indicated level of resource, but the 100-meter gives us that inferred, and we will go back and do that infill drilling. That's certainly part of the plan there. And it's interesting that you mentioned the plunging zones, or the 30% of the overall vein being favorable, let's say, because that actually occurs that's why Nepoleon is so interesting in this district, because it's something new that we haven't really seen elsewhere in the mined areas. Like as I mentioned, so Panuco actually went into production earlier than San Dimas. It went into production 450 years ago with the conquistadors. And so it's had a significant history. And there's one vein in particular that was the center of historic mining and modern historic mining, which was over the last 100 years, let's say. And that's the Animus vein corridor. And the Animus is very similar to what you described at San Dimas. We believe, it's not 43-101 compliant. There's all the disclosure but based on historical records and what we know about the district and things that we've looked at, and looking at the void spaces, we suspect that there's been about 100 million ounces of silver equivalent taken out of 8 large ore shoots along the Animus vein, and that would be very comparable to San Dimas. And when I first got to the project, our main guy there, Jose Vizquera, who actually worked at what they called Tayoltita at the time, but now it's San Dimas. He worked both at Panuco. He's a local to the area, and he worked both at San Dimas and Panuco. And he said this is identical to what we see there at San Dimas. So there is a precedent for that, for it being comparable, to those zones. But what we see here at Nepoleon is just such a kind of a freak of nature, in the sense that you have this big panel without the kind of ore shoots along it. It's just one big ore shoot, essentially.
Well, it'll be great to see. It'll be great to see the resource. Hopefully there'll be some nice long sections in there, and kind of a complete list of drill holes. Geologists always like to be able to kind of correlate where the drill holes are, where the misses are, where the gaps are in the zone. Are you planning to publish the drill hole database along with the resource, or will it be included as kind of an appendix? Well,
we certainly will, and we've disclosed information about every hole. We pride ourselves on the disclosure and the press releases. So what we've done, you go back to, I think it would have been about a month and a half ago, our Nepoleon big Nepoleon release where we put out all of the drill hole data and the averages, right? Where we take the resource area and we say it's kilometer by 300 by 3.5, and we actually mentioned the specific gravity as well too, which is 2.72.
Yeah.
And from that point on, you can kind of do the math that we provide in the press release. And so that's we pride ourselves on that disclosure. And when we put the resource out, we'll have that very readily available for everybody to review, because we're we just think it's impressive. So happy to let people see that on their own.
Great, thank you. And when the resource comes out, how much of the resource do you think will be on the Napoleon vein? Or on the Napoleon?
Really good question. I would say if you look at strike and area there, I would say that it's going to be more than half of that would be certainly on Napoleon, and probably getting close to 3/4. But Tajitos, actually, we put out news on Tajitos last week, and Tajitos is starting to really gather momentum as well, and the strike there is growing. We're stepping out to the north and the south, and it's responding to that. So we have a bit of a head-to-head race, let's say, with Tajitos and Napoleon. And then of course we've made that second EM discovery there at Josephine, which is a parallel vein to Napoleon. In the northern part of Napoleon, it's about 50 meters to the west. In the southern part of Napoleon, it's 200 meters to the west. We are drilling that actively as well too. So there, I think there will be some portion of that. Whether you want to consider that part of Napoleon, I would consider it. In some incidents in the north, we can drill through Napoleon into Josephine, but I would consider Josephine as another portion or another aspect of the overall resource. And
coming to the massive sulfide elements of the resource, is it kind of that fine-grained sphalerite and galena with the silver minerals? Is that what you mean by massive sulfide, or is it? Do you get kind of coarse-grained zinc and lead minerals?
Well, I'm happy to actually show a graphic of that, because I think that might be the most serving. Sure. Is that okay to share my?
Please do.
It is that kind of classic massive sulfide here, where it actually isn't just a silver mineralization. It really is. It really has to do with the unique massive sulfide material.
The technical report from last year said that the grades are highest when you're in the lower fault zone, when you get this very fine grain in the gray quartz, and it's gray because of the silver minerals. And then there's a fine grained pyrite and a fine grained sphalerite and galena through it.
That's right. Yeah.
When you talk about the response from the EM, whether it was that fine grained material, or there's a difference kind of
this is
what you're talking about.
Yeah, I suspect that this might be different, or I don't have that report in front of me. But so here's what we see here in the Napoleon hole 7, which was that sub interval, which is still the highest grade. We actually drilled a hole at Josephine that was just under this. It was 20 kilos instead of 21 in a sub interval. But this gives you an idea of that massive sulfide material here. And you see, do you have that double digit lead? Now I don't know the specific mineralogy of the silver in this specific area, but I just wanted to give this as a visual representation of what we see here with massive sulfide.
Interesting. Nice director's holders, though. It's lovely.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And this was that the material that we drilled on the EM discovery, which was a sub interval here at of I believe 4.4 kilos of it was a very short aspect to it, but it was more of a proof of concept that the EM targeting does work here with in the district. And so we have other follow-up holes in the area. As you can see here, this is the Napoleon vein corridor, Tajitos, as we discussed here to the east. And you can see that the EM plate here picking up Napoleon quite well. And then we were able to pick up Josephine here and drilled into that. But we also have these plates up here, priority targets up here that we're looking forward to having some results. I believe we should have that before the resource cutoff as well too. So there's a number of targets in the area here. Now, this is great. The ground fixed loop EM plates, is great. for this area. But what excites me the most is that we're going to actually fly the entire property with airborne EM and geophysics. And my suspicion is that this isn't the only area in the entire district that has this massive sulfide mineralization. As a matter of fact, I've seen it elsewhere underground. And I think that it's possible that we'll discover new targets, flatline structures, things like that have never been been known about because they haven't outcropped on the property. So for me, the EM is it's almost like having the keys to the district in two ways. One, I think we'll find new discoveries with the EM, or we'll be able to target new drill hole discoveries with the EM, but also it should take us to some of the highest grade areas of these veins where this massive sulfide phase occurs.
Sorry, did you say that the EM survey that you've got was ground EM?
This is the only area that we did it was this ground EM here.
Okay, and what's the correlation like between the EM anomalies and the drilling success? I mean, have you drilled any of these EM anomalies which have not hit mineralization, or kind of been false anomalies?
The only false anomaly that we did get had to do with a power line that was interfering with it. But in terms of actually drilling targets, we've been 100% on that so far. Okay, now, I'm not, I certainly want to make the caveat here in the disclosure that I don't think that every single hole is going to be a hit. I'm sure there's going to be some false positives and things like that. But, in an epithermal district, to have the ability to have a strong success rate on this is really, in my opinion, groundbreaking. And
well, I can see that you've got different thicknesses of your EM targets there. So, for example, the one just below the Josephine vein, where it says new EM discovered in 3 holes, you've got a very fat one there, and then you've got 2 skinnier ones on just to the east of that.
That really only has to do with the orientation of the mineralization. It's not. It doesn't. I wouldn't say that it's actually the vein width necessarily, but just the orientation. If it's vertical or subvertical.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah, that would be excellent if we could target volume as well.
Well, anyway, it's just a question from what it looked like. Thank you. That's really interesting. And so, when will you be able to fly the whole area, and how much will that cost?
So we budgeted, I think we're at somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million for flying the entire property, and we expect that to be completed towards the end of the year here. The reason that we've waited to do that, of course, is just we're in the middle of the rainy season down here in Sinaloa, so it doesn't respond as well when there's more kind of ground cover. I understand. So we wait till that's over, and I think it's probably November, December that we expect to do that, and I hope that we'll have some of the results out in the new year.
It would be good to have at least some comment on it in the resource statement. I don't know if you can get that in. If the group who's doing the resource work.
So we have a consultant here named Tim Termandi who's going to be doing that with us here. Yeah.
So, and who will he be signing off? So he's qualified to sign off on your resource.
That's right. Yeah.
And is he embedded with your team at the moment?
No, he's an independent resource geologist there. Yeah.
And do you model your results coming through? Have you got the capacity internally to pull your resource, your drill results into 3 dimensions and model it as you go, or do you send them off to him and then he uploads it?
So we certainly have our own internal models and things like that. That's definitely part of the work that our team does, but he's doing that independently. Great.
And can you just go up back to the photographs of the core, please?
Sure.
It looks quite brittle to me and quite broken up. What are the ground conditions like in the mines there?
Well, it really does vary from area to area. We have, but broadly speaking, it's very competent rock. We've been underground around Nepoleon here, and there's areas that are extremely competent where you've had big void spaces that haven't moved in decades. And then there are certainly areas that have a little bit more a little bit softer rock conditions, but it's, broadly speaking, it's it's quite a competent country rock here.
And is all of your drilling at Nepoleon and the corridor to the east, Tajitos and Cinco Señores, is that also is that all being done from surface, or have you got any underground rigs on old drives and adits?
Right now, it's all from surface. Yeah, we've reviewed and gone through a number of kind of scenarios where we could drill from underground, and it just appears easiest now. We've got excellent access from surface, that drilling from underground just hasn't been a large priority.
Yeah, great. So what happens? So a resource out Q1, and you were saying you were trying to keep going on the drilling at a 9,000, 10,000 meters a month. And what's the plan in terms of what you do after that resource? Are you going to just try and show the scale of the district, or are you going to try and take some part of that higher up the development curve, or a bit of both?
Well, one of the things I'd like to stress, of course, is that our group is capable and driven to take this all the way into production here. So I should probably highlight some of our team. Chairman Craig Perry, my partner in Venta Capital, and we've worked together for years now. But Craig's, recognize him from Skeena Resources, NextGen, ISO Energy. He was also a partner in Tiger's Realm, and one of those companies he led, Tiger's Realm Coal, built a coking coal project in far eastern Russia. So definite, development, production experience there. And then we also have Simon Smirlik, who's the COO at Ausenco Engineering. And so, Simon's built more mines than many of us have even seen, including Las Chispas. So they're building Las Chispas right now, which is a comp to this in a few ways. So with Simon's experience, worked at Olympic Dam and Goro, multi-billion-dollar capex engineering projects, and then of course building probably, tens of billions of dollars of projects around the world. Right now, we have really competent experience on that level. Our VP Tech Services, Marty Dupuy, spent about 10 years at Pan American Silver, building mines and operating mines in Mexico as well. So we have the bench strength to take this forward. And I should also speak to the team that we have on the ground there. Hernando Rueda, who is our country manager, was most recently with Capstone, and prior to that with Agnico Eagle. So we're definitely not a group that's just poking holes in the ground and putting a for sale sign up. We're serious about this. And the thing that I look at when I see Vizsla, of course we're going to do this for the rest of our lives. Why rush to get rid of something that has the scale, the grade, and the propensity to grow that Vizsla Silver has here at Panuco? Craig often says he wants to see his grandkids get dividend checks out of these projects. So,
well, I know, I've been in the game long enough to know that when you've got a really good asset, you don't want to let it go too quickly.
Yeah.
But I think my question was kind of more to the point that I had a quick look at the San Dimas kind of report from last year, and they did 26 kilometers of development and produced 13 million ounces of silver equivalent. So you're effectively talking of 2 kilometers of development, underground development, for every million ounces that you produce on an ongoing basis. And it won't be the same at Panuco, but kind of it's a good yardstick. And really, it's just that building a mine is difficult and hard yards, and for a certain period, it's easier to keep exploring when you can. I just wondered, how quickly you're going to start putting the engineering around it, and how hard you're going to go on the. Let's say for 2022, is the focus still on exploration?
Well, and I appreciate that. I maybe didn't answer that directly, but the plan here really is to put this initial resource out in Q1 2022. From that, I see multiple expansions of those resources, because we're not going to just stop drilling. Once we put that resource out, the rigs will continue. There's sometimes we talk about adding more rigs as well too, and that may be something that we see in the future. And then in the background, what we've been working on, of course, is how do we optimize the existing infrastructure here? So, we have the El Coco mill. We're doing baseline geotech, baseline environmental work behind the scenes. All of those engineering trade-off studies that you would expect, someone to do with a mill. We're not sitting on our hands, in terms of de-risking the next steps here. One of the other things that I'm proud of is that our team's been doing a great job of working with the ejidos and putting long-term exploitation agreements in place there as well. So the next steps here, I think at some point we may come out and surprise the market with just kind of how ready we are to move into production at Panuco. But of course, the work that we're doing with exploration and drilling and moving towards the resource and growing the resource, that is some really value creative work that we're doing, and it seems to have high impact on the value that we create with the drill bit. So that's our focus right now.
Michael, thank you so much. That's a really great introduction for me to the technical side of the business. I've really enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you very much, and I look very much forward to seeing how the resource develops in Q1, and I'm hearing from you about that.
Oh, very good, Merlin. I appreciate and look forward to connecting again here shortly.